tube of yours at my other end. I'll be more than happy to have you take a peek. Because you see, what I have, doctor, is old-fashioned diarrhea. Are you there? Dr. Jackson. Well, folks, I'm happy to inform you that was the last we heard from that eminent physician. Sometimes the weight of this office gets very, very hard. Pressures are almost unbearable. And when those pressures get borderline, folks, I tell you where I go. Independence, Missouri. I go home. You know, I think it's the isolation in that White House that does it, and I start losing touch with people, just like you. So I go home again. I run as fast as I can to 219 North Delaware Street, Independence, Missouri. Because you see, back home I can pull things down to size. Well, I have to tell you, those first trips back home, I spent less time pulling than I did pushing that blamed lawnmower. So I decided I'd mow the lawn one Sunday morning. Now bear with me here. I started mowing the lawn and people came out from everywhere. Why, of course, they were going to church, just like you good folks did today. And I saw my neighbors and I waved to them and I told them what a beautiful day it was. And it was a gorgeous day. The sun was out and I was just greeting everybody. And then I got close to the fence the Secret Service put in, and there was Sue sitting on the other side of the fence. You mind being Sue this morning, Fence? And I reached through the fence and I shook Sue's hand. And I talked with her for a moment, and then all of a sudden Sue said to me, "Mr. President, why are you mowing the lawn on Sunday?" I said, "Well, Sue, I believe the grass grows on Sunday just like any other day of the week, doesn't it?" Yes. And she said, "Yes, just like that." And then she told me she had to go to church. I said, "Fine, fine, Sue. Oh, you just go right to church and have a good pray. Have a good pray. Make sure you pray for me." And then I yelled up to the house. We were living in Mother Wallace's house, Bess's mother. I said, "I have to mow the lawn," hoping she would hear me, and I think she did. So I kept mowing the lawn. Bess came down eventually, and she was angry. She said I was embarrassing her mother. I said, "Well, now, Bess, how am I doing that? You asked me to mow the lawn." She said she's on the warpath. And then I realized this was serious. I said, "Bess, I'm so sorry. I'll stop mowing the lawn. I will. But please, tell your mother I am going to run for re-election. If I can't beat that Thomas Dewey." And then I brought her over and I said, "Now, Bess, you tell her I am not only going to run for re-election, but I'm going to win." I was hoping to get her mind off of the lawnmower for a moment. But as she went, she said, "Now, you put that mower away." I said, Bess, I will." And I did. Now, folks, I've never had to mow the lawn again because, you see, with Bess, my wife, the boss, if you do something on Sunday, she believes you've tarnished the Sabbath. And you'll never have to do it again. And I think that's a good way to live. And it sure helped me to stop mowing the lawn. Now, I got to tell you something else about Bess. She's the tomboy in the family. She doesn't mind me telling you that. She was asked to play baseball with the kids. They didn't ask me, they made me umpire. Now, I'll tell you something else about Bess. She's very modest about her accomplishments. She was the shot put champion of Independence High School. Now, that's a fact. Well, my mother, she was a very sweet and gentle woman. She introduced me to the piano and reading. She was very artistic, very musical, and she had a college degree. Now, my father, folks, he was a feisty little guy. His name was John. He liked to sneak up behind people and knock off their hats when they weren't looking. He quit school at an early age. He told his father, my grandfather, that he wanted to become a mule trader. Well, my grandfather said, "Now, John, now that's not a very noble position to aspire to, but if that's what you want to do, why, you go ahead anyway, because nobody will probably believe you." I did not go to college. I had to help my father on a farm during some very difficult years, but I did do timekeeping for Santa Fe Railroad. You know, I've had to wear these eyeglasses almost all my life. I got a bad case of diphtheria when I was 10 years old, almost went blind. And I have to admit, I wasn't very athletic as a boy. But there came a time when I had to decide if I wanted to join my brothers and get into the war and see if we could bring this terrible, terrible World War I to a close. So I told Bess, now you have to realize, folks, I didn't get married till I was 40 years old. I told Bess I was going to enlist in the Army. She looked at me like I was the biggest fool that ever walked the face of the earth. She said, now Harry, let me get this straight. You're going to walk down to that enlistment office and tell them you want to serve in the Army? I said, absolutely. I want to do my civic service. She said, well now Harry, first off, you're blind as a bat. They're not going to take you. And secondly, I hate to inform you, you're too old. Well, now Bess may know a lot of things, but she didn't know a whole lot about the Army and where the war was right then. Because you see, it was near the end of the war, and they were taking anybody that could put on a uniform, hold a rifle, and walk at the same time. Well, I barely qualified, but I did. Because you see, I was also, before I went to war, a captain in the National Guard. So they assigned me an artillery outfit. It's called Battery D. I knew nothing about it, except that I was told by a fellow officer they were the wildest, hardest drinking bunch of Irishmen that ever staggered down the streets of Kansas City. Found out they had 2 officers leading them before me. The first one got run out of the Army because he couldn't handle the boys in Battery D. Oh yes, by the way, because of their reputation, they were called the Dizzy D's. Now the second officer had a nervous breakdown. Well, I'll never forget the first day I met that bunch. I said, boys, you're all going to get along with me, each and every one of you. And you know why? Because I'm going to hold you responsible for the discipline in your squad. Now, if any of you can't handle that, step forward right now, and I'll punch you right in the nose. Anyone? No one did. I dismissed them. And you know what? The boys in Battery D and I got along very well. In fact, the boys in Battery D did very well in World War I. Well, I shipped back from France after the war, and Bess and I talked about getting married. Of course, Bess's mother, Madge Gates Wallace, had some misgivings about it, but we went ahead anyway. Now, I have to confess, I was not exactly the son-in-law Mother Wallace had in mind. But if she did nothing more than have Bess, well, that's good enough for me. But you know the old adage, before every successful man, there's a proud wife and a surprise mother-in-law. Well, we got married, and we moved into Mother Wallace's house, and we've been living there ever since. I remember one day when I was president, I came downstairs in the house into the parlor, and there was Bess kneeling down by the fireplace, burning letters that I had sent her. I said, Bess, you ought not do that. She said, why not? I've read them all. I said, Bess, think of history. She looked up at me and said, I am. And kept on burning. A few